I feel like that was a nice intro. We are at 15 minutes, which is when I like to do our famous now quotes section.
Oh.
Big quote section. I'm going to hit Colin with two quotes. He's going to guess who said these quotes, and then we'll do a little discussion.
Cool.
Usually I do one lighter quote up top, one heavier quote. Today I went with two kind of a little more existential quotes.
Oh, boy.
But I think Colin's the right partner for this kind of conversation. So here we go.
Let's hear it.
Here's the first one. Okay. I know many of you will feel uncomfortable when I say this, but the hippies created the police as much as the police create the hippies.
Nixon.
Ramdas.
Ramdas.
American, spiritualist, thinker. Previously was a clinical psychologist. He's 88 years old, lives in California.
Never even heard of him.
Interesting guy. There's a good GQ exposition on him. The quote though, how do you feel about that? You think that's true?
Hippies created the police, as much as the police created the hippies.
Yeah.
Well, I think the hippie movement, or the beatnik movement,
Right.
prior,
That led into it, right?
I think culture reacts to institutions.
Mm.
I think that, it's kind of interesting that we were talking about this earlier without even knowing the quote, but like, in the when did the Vietnam War end? Like 75, 73 or whatever.
I think so.
That generation is the first generation, by and large, to react and feel disinterested and distrustful of their government in a mass quantity. Like I'm almost certain that's one of the first like massive countercultures that wasn't stifled by the government, and it was emboldened by media coverage and
right.
journalism with an urgency for truth.
Right.
So I think I really do think that I don't know if I'd agree with it, because I mean in certain aspects, but I really feel as if culture is a reactionary kind of an organically reactionary kind of thing, and if you're living in it, you can feel it. Like,
so the hippies don't really create the police so much as the police create the hippies, or really more the government. I mean, because the police are the police an institution? Are they an arm of the government?
They're
here to serve and protect.
They're really bureaucrats with bureaucrats with guns. I would argue they're absolutely. I don't think I have to argue it. I think they're absolutely a branch of government institution. Yeah,
government.
And they're told to look at things and
uphold the law.
And to uphold the law. They really can't have that gray area. Right. I always wonder how often these police
brutality videos.
Well, I often wonder how, like, you ever see like movements where like there's a protest and the police have to protect, or not protect, but like stifle it.
Yeah.
I often wonder how many of those policemen are like, I don't necessarily believe in what I'm doing here.
Right, I'm doing here, right.
And I have to
tear
feel
gassing civilians.
Yeah,
It's like...
and it makes me wonder. It's like that sucks if you don't believe in something and you literally have, it's your job to suppress people. And I'm just talking strictly in forms of protests. And I know I have a few friends of mine who are policemen, and I don't think there's anything wrong with going that avenue, but it really, I don't know. I feel like you put yourself in a box as to what your values are, specifically, not like you're not a humanitarian if you're a cop or whatever, but it's like you have to uphold certain aspects of the law.
Right.
And it's kind of a bummer when I really think about it. Yeah.
They can't really be a part of. They're a part of the culture, but they're not a part of the counter culture. They're not a part of the. They're conservative, essentially. They're trying to keep things as they are.
Well, yeah, it's interesting. It's like they have to be. Like
right.
A buddy of mine is he's a registered Democrat. I don't want to say that Democrats can't be conservative, but
right.
It's almost like you can't. I don't think you can. It's not that you can't be. You have to be conservative, but I feel as if you almost can't be liberal if you're a police officer, just because, the waves of liberalism, not necessarily like neoliberalism, just like the idea of being liberal in general is just almost always associated with like a fuck the man mentality. And if you're a cop, you're like the man,
right,
or at least you're an extension of the man that has to enforce it.
Right,
and it's it's interesting how you really sort of can't be as free thinking and open minded if you take that avenue.
Yeah, you can't fight and keep the status quo.
Yeah.
You know? So what about, I mean, the hippies, that's kind of long gone. What do we see is now the current, hippie movement? Because it seems like the institutions, I mean, I think there could be a case to be made that they've become more oppressive, more intrusive.
Oh, absolutely. I think
we don't see souped up hippies.
I think we're in a position right now in our culture where there's many different groups who are all fighting for this hegemonic control of our culture, like almost every group. I think you can categorize the groups that are in America right now as like the right, the new alternative right, the neoliberal left, like the remnants of the neoliberal Democrats, the Democratic Socialists, and like the
super progressives.
Yeah, and like and then the staunch traditional conservative Republicans.
Right.
And I feel as if they're all kind of competing for what their like narrative is. And I don't think you can necessarily trace it to like where the hippies are, because they all had kids and shit, like it's all sporadic. There's so many different narratives being proponed right now where it's like I don't necessarily think you can pinpoint, and the internet makes it fucking 10 times worse, where it's like. So it's just
our trap rappers, the hippies, in a certain sense.
Oh yeah, that's interesting. I haven't thought about that.
And you talk about a quest for hegemonic control. I do agree, although it seems like the neoliberals and the classic conservatives are, I mean, maybe it's just the way I'm perceiving it, but it really seems like those have lost their control, and the control is increasingly going to the further stratified parts of the spectrum.
It's interesting. If you want to talk in terms of political control, I absolutely agree.
Right.
But it's so odd where, like, in the mainstream media, that's what's being reported as, like, the traditional... Because that's who's watching it. It's like I don't tune into Fox News or CNN, at night at 7.
No, you don't.
And the interesting thing is, it's like, the mainstream ones, and then the alt-right and the Democratic Socialists, these are young movements. They're all collaborating online. So the mainstream media is just reporting on like the explosions that happen from the like Pizzagate and shit. They're just coming on these like explosions, and then it leaves the traditional people is like, all these damn kids, and it's doing it's like this hippie movement all over again in a way. It's so fascinating. But to go back to the initial question, I really don't think you can pinpoint like it to the hippies or the idea of the hippies to like one conglomerate, because within the online like liberal left culture there's all these like splintering like avenues, and there's all these different people. It's like there isn't one hegemony in these groups anymore. It's so clustered with like this era of like information we're living in where everyone has a say.
So who are the moving more to the cultural? Who are the cultural groups? I mean, I brought up trap rappers, maybe vegans.
So it's.
I mean, there's some intersection between that, because
by cultural groups, do you mean like the figures in a way who are sort of like weaving their own narratives into culture? Or?
In a certain sense, maybe the groups as a whole the groups as a whole, and they're really groups just because that's how people identify, and they they hoist that label, or it gets hoisted upon them, but that are trying to establish a certain sense of control. I mean, you think about trap rap, it's by far the most listened to genre by the hippies of our in terms of age, the young people, because we're the quote unquote. I mean, the hippies were young; they weren't 50 years old.
Yeah,
they were kids and not necessarily in college, but some of them were in college. But they were out there.
I think if you want to go down that route, I think that musicians are almost never controlling what the culture is. I always feel as if they're almost reporting on it, if that makes sense. Like they're immersed in it and they're living in it, and then they make art that is a reflection of it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And of the specific moment.
Yeah, like look at
timestamps.
Exactly. Like look at this might be a terrible example, but look at like Lil Nas X, like
the Old Town Road guy. Yeah.
I don't know what his intentions were. Maybe he just found a twangy trappy.
Take my horse.
Yeah, man. But that song slaps. Like, it's so good.
Great song. Love that song.
And I'm not saying that's like he's reporting on. I'm not saying it has any bigger message. But what I'm saying is, it's interesting how he just put that out there, and then people reacted to that in a way.
Well, even further, it's actually interesting. Going to your point, he put that out there initially, and the institutions pushed back. They were like, "It's not country enough." And then he was like, "Okay, I'm getting Billy Ray Cyrus on this beat."
And it's so I don't know necessarily if it was him. I certainly think that it was a reactionary thing where like that this is kind of where he's at right now, and anybody can put anything out, and anybody can produce things now with software. They can get any software they want, and I think that he just put that out there and it caught on, and it just it's kind of beautiful in a way where it's like you don't need capital to actually do anything anymore. It's pretty beautiful, and this kind of goes back to what you were saying where. Who's in control? I don't think anyone's in control. Right. There used to be a time where you needed
the institution.
You needed the support of the institutions, and you needed capital to sway culture, and you needed the support of institutions. Those two things are out the window now.
Right.
You can make your own narrative with your own talk show on your own fucking podcast. You can do whatever you want, and if people like it, then that's a narrative that you can weave into things.
It's true. Okay. I like that. That was strong. This clip's gonna go viral. Okay, second quote here. It is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society.
Huh.
Who do you think said that?
I'm not sure. Is it someone like famous or someone that's obscure that I wouldn't really necessarily know?
I don't think you'd probably know him. It's Jiddu Krishnamurti, who's an Indian philosopher.
No idea. I wish I did philosophy.
I did not actually hear him through my philosophy degree, but I definitely. I mean, I'm a big proponent of philosophy. I'll repeat the quote.
That's why I like poli sci. There's a lot of philosophy in it.
There is, certainly. Yeah. It is. I'll repeat the quote. It is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society.
What is he speaking in terms of like?
I think he's speaking in terms of like people being, day to day, just being blasé about the fact that. Many different aspects, whether it be the society, the person down the street who's struggling and who's always struggled and is always on that street corner, or even, across the world, bombings and starvation.
That quote makes me think of class a lot. I feel like he used the word. Did he use the word symptom in that? Is that? Can you?
You go for it. Second quote right there. It is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society.
Yeah, I think that really makes me think of how we're definitely I don't necessarily know if we're more mentally ill than we were or if it's more reported. But I think that like the common denominator in all of this is like our just complete cynicism for like corporate America, which is deserved, absolutely.
That's right.
And the fact that everyone is seeing everyone else's life,
right? Social media. There's a lot of desensitizing. So it's just like, why am I supposed to care about?
And I at the risk of sounding like every other goddamn millennial, it's like I don't want a 9 to 5. I really do think that it's absolutely warranted for people to be feeling just terrible.
Right.
Like everyone just feels awful. Like all of the time.
To do a callback, even Gary Goldman had depression. He was talking about that.
His tour right now, it's called The Great Depression.
The Great Depression.
He had to take like a year and a half off from comedy because he just felt sick. Like it's definitely a phenomenon, and I would love to see some sort of reports, or I think it's too early to say definitively, but because social media and human history is such a new thing.
So young.
And also we're living in a time of we're in this technology renaissance where it could be any other infinitesimal variables that are acting towards what is making us all so sick. It could be something in the water that we don't even know. Like, but I think that's the general conclusion that a lot of people are coming to. It's that, yeah, we're all just so tired of it. Like,
we're well adjusted.
Yeah, and we're well adjusted, but we're just sick of it. Like, right. I'm so sick of like looking at my phone and getting a message and then pretending I didn't see it. You ever do? I'm just so tired of being like, I gotta play this game, like these like arbitrary rules that no one made, but I feel like I gotta I'm just so fucking tired of it. You know, like I
know what you mean.
And it's like everyone like will post like how, you know, their day, or I'm at a party or whatever, and it's like, and then it's like, when I was younger, I felt like I had to do this too, or else I was like missing out on some sort of like phenomenon. I was missing, or people would think I'm a fucking loser. And then once you get older, you realize you don't care. And I'm 22. I'm not fucking, you know, I'm not old, but it's like, I don't know. I just feel like there's definitely something there, and I'll read like narratives from like the 50s, even like fictional narratives or just you know, journal entries or diary entries, and that the fear of like FOMO, you know, fear of missing out, that's a relevant thing. That's like something, but the difference is they didn't know exactly what was happening. Right. It's like you're at this event, but you're not at all, and that sucks. You know.
Yeah, we are so aware of what we're missing now.
Yeah, it's really, and I think, I don't know, it definitely is a culmination of like, or definitely it definitely seeps into like everything we do, like dating and like just intimate relations and friendships and like just jobs and everything. I don't know. I don't have the answer, but I do like that quote. I'm gonna look him up.
Yeah, definitely do. I don't really know him that well. When I looked him up, he was another person that came along with him was Osho, the guy, the guru cult leader from the Netflix documentary Wild Wild Country.
Oh, cool.
In the 80s, which is fantastic. Definitely check that out.
I will.
It's mind-blowing documentary. But he was a little twisted, Osho. I hope Krishnamurti is clean in light of the fact that I just used his quote. The only thing about the quote, though, and I think you agreed with the implicit assumption that it makes, which is at the end, you know, this phrasing, a profoundly sick society. You know, so it's working under the assumption that the society is sick.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, what you were saying would be, you know, would tap into that and would go alongside with it. But maybe the society isn't so sick. Maybe our perception of the society is that it's sicker than it's ever been, but in reality, it could be something else. It could be the society could be better than it's ever been. You know, the greatest possible world at the greatest possible time. You know, bringing a little Voltaire.
That's an interesting point. It makes me think of how apparently, crime in America is at an all-time low.
Yeah.
You wouldn't think that if you opened your phone or you turned on the news.
Crime or maybe violence?
Crime
is at an all-time low.
Yeah, like in like all across the board. So I've heard. I haven't
I feel like I've heard that
actually read any, looked into the specifics of these statistics, but I've heard over the past few years from like government institutions that crime is at an all-time low comparative to. And I guess you know, look at New York a few decades ago compared to now. Woo. Not that New York is like the end all be all, but it's a pretty important city.
Yeah, no.
And crime has gone down
significantly.
But I generally wouldn't think that if from listening to news pundits or listening to, you know, the radio or going on my phone, because I feel like everyone's always kind of, you know, reporting on the horrible. Right. And it makes sense because, you know, it's eye-catchy. Journalism's transformed because it's more, what matters more is about going on the page and looking at these ads instead of actually go. You ever open an article and it's like you're reading it and then it's like you gotta slide down like 6 ads to get to the rest of the article. Or
you gotta keep going to the next page, like they put it over 10 pages. Yeah, it's like I'm not reading this.
And you gotta get the little X to get and then, it's a nightmare. But that's an interesting point. It makes me think of how, you know, if something isn't propped in front of us, we won't even know it. Like, the world is beautiful.
I like to think so. It's a gorgeous day, I'd say.
You ever? Yeah, we're in like fucking shitty apartment.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. When you came here today, I like to just sit on that stoop and fucking look at people because it's funny.
People watching.
Because they don't notice me looking at them, and I'm just like, look at you. And it's not like in an angry. But sometimes they'll see a dog, and I'm like, hello there.
Nice dog.
I just like it's just funny when people they're living their lives, and
right.
I'm just sitting here on a stoop with a beer, kind of just looking at them.
Well, you're tuning in, you know.
Yeah,
like it's
cool.
not. You don't need your phone. You know, it's not. Yeah. It's just life.
There's always a need to like do something.
Right. You can just be.
Yeah, which I don't do nearly enough. I wish I wish I did. I wish I had the discipline to just be like, I'm gonna do nothing.
Yeah.
But even people looking is something, you know.
Yeah. Right. Well, I mean, I think the people looking works into like the doing, quote unquote, doing nothing.
True.
But I would, instead of phrasing it as doing nothing, I would say that's like literally just being, like existence. Like
I did this the other day. I was just kind of in like a really like odd mood, and I got some looks, and it was kind of funny. You should try this. Go to a coffee shop.
Okay.
Get your coffee, and just fucking do nothing. Don't look at it. Just stare like this. And sometimes drink, but just do this.
Like at a wall or...
People fucking look at you weird. It's kind of fun. I did this at Starbucks the other day, and like I noticed the guy like reading his book, but he wasn't turning a page. Like
right. He was just looking at you.
He was just looking at me. He was just like what's this guy doing? And I'm just like I'm nodding. I'm not making any faces. I'm just like this.
Start foaming.
Just like yeah. He gave me the look like he thought I was gonna bite his neck or something. And I was just looking at nothing, and it's interesting how always having to be doing something leisurely is like a part of our life, and it always has been. I'm not saying it's a symptom of social media,
right?
But always needing impulsively to be doing something is
right.
What it is to be human now. It's interesting.
Right. Anyway, I mean that coincides with. I mean, you were talking about mental illness before, but I mean it also coincides with the rise of other things like ADHD or. You know, all this constant, you know, the attention spans are so low. I just need to be fidgeting with something.
Yeah. And this has always been, like, this has been...
True.
I'm not saying this is a new thing. This
right.
has been...
But maybe the wave is rising, perhaps.
Yeah. This is fucking... Like, Socrates writes about how, like... There's a quote, was like, literacy, like, actually, like, reading and writing is a symptom of a greater issue. You probably...
I don't know that quote. I didn't do too much of the ancients, but...
That could also be some bullshit article I saw on Facebook. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe you don't know. We don't know.
Truth is a relative term. I have no fucking idea. I have no idea anymore.
No idea. Okay, very nice. I thought that was an excellent quote section.
That's a cool, fun little game. I like that.
Yeah, I like I'm a fan of quotes. Usually goes over well with the guests. I try to find something that I think will pair well, but I don't know. I feel like most quotes usually bring something out of people if they're decent. But if they weren't decent, they wouldn't have been spliced down to a quote.